What's going on, everybody? Philip Aguilera with Idea Sex Discussions. I'm here with Vianela Halsall, who is a senior research associate at the University of Missouri, Kansas. Kansas City, stand corrected. So we're here because we're trying to, as the whole idea of this is to have sex with good ideas, to try to propagate the ideas that need propagating so that we can make a better planet from today onward. And we've been hanging around here all weekend, and we've had terrific discussions already. So now we're going to get it on video so that you guys can see what she has to say. And another thing is, I like to just get the normal everyday person. Neither one of us are celebrities. Neither one of us are people, that are out there that with known opinions. We're everyday people, so how are we applying these ideas we're talking about in our lives?
Mm-hmm.
So you are a university researcher, senior research associate. So what is it that you are finding with the type of research that you're doing, and how can it be applied to the world that we live in today?
Sure. So at the university, I work at different training centers, and the training centers are for to train professionals in the field of healthcare.
Okay.
So we focus on pretty much the areas that we focus on are areas that people would probably consider taboo in conversation. So we focus on reproductive health
Okay.
and substance use.
Mm-hmm.
And what we find is that a lot of people, even professionals in the healthcare world, they know that like sexually transmitted infections is important. They know the opioid epidemic is important, but they may not feel like they have the language to talk to patients about that, or they may not feel comfortable taking a deep dive there. So what we do is we try to provide tools and language and practice so that they feel like they can talk about these things.
And how do you feel this research is moving on? How are you adding to these people's vocabulary so that they can be comfortable about talking about whatever it is that they're trying to, overcome?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we definitely know that, this isn't going to go away. It's not going to go away by us just being silent
What
about
is this?
So for example, this can be the opioid epidemic.
Okay.
Right now, we are seeing an increase in sexually transmitted infections. Even in the past 2 years, there's been a significant increase across the country of sexually transmitted infections, and we have to talk about these things, and we have to talk about it in a non-judgmental way.
Yes.
We have to give people spaces so that they can talk about it and not feel like they're being judged
Yes.
with whatever experiences they may have. But,
So say something like herpes, which, carries a lot of luggage.
Right.
But when you look into, and I don't know, you're the research person, but when I've looked into just how easily and quickly herpes is spread, it seems like something that's very, very, prevalent throughout humanity for a very long time, but people are afraid to say these things, or nobody's ever said these things.
Right.
So the honest thing is, most of the people out there might have something like this, but this doesn't make them bad people. This doesn't make them somebody that should be shunned from society.
Right.
So how do we get the message out to the people that, okay, you have something like this, surround yourself with people who are going to help you get through it, instead of, it's be like, oh, you have this thing, and now you're a disease instead of a person.
Right.
So how can we continue to get a message like that out and help humans evolve towards being more open with people so that they can heal instead of being pointed at?
Definitely we have to normalize things, and we definitely have to take the stigma out of things. So for example, we talk a lot about the stigma when it comes to drug use.
Yes.
There's a lot of stigma around substance use. There's a lot of pointing fingers, and actually sexually transmitted infections as well. There's a lot of, they deserved that because they did They made their
They
choice.
made the choice, yeah.
They
and,
knew there
and
were
what do you think
consequences.
about the people who have those types of ideas that you made a choice and now you have to live with the consequences?
You know, I think we've all made certain choices and we really didn't understand what the consequences would be. And some of us were just really lucky, and
Yes.
you know, the consequence was not that bad.
Yeah.
And then some people made choices and not fully understanding what the consequences would be, and then they found out that the consequences were life-threatening.
Yes.
Or, you know, were a little bit more intense than what they would be. So yeah.
So how do we get those people to heal and back to the
right?
healing
So one
process?
of the things that we talk a lot about, there's a lot of this there's a lot, especially in substance use world, there's a lot of shaming people.
Okay, yeah.
And even in the language that people can use, there can be some shame, like drug abuser.
Yeah, okay.
You know, that's a very shame.
Yeah.
It carries a lot of
Yeah.
shame type language. It's a very judgy language. And, you know, a person can pick up the nuance under that. They can pick up that
through the body language,
drug
tone,
abuser, you know, it
yes.
just, you know, and why, if a person is trying to seek help, seek recovery, seek services, why would they go somewhere or seek it out in the first place if they know that the language that is going to be spoken to them will be one just like written with shame?
Yes.
And just kind of like pointing their finger, being pointed at.
Yeah, so you're in an echo chamber of you did this wrong thing and now you have to live with it and you can never get out of it.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that in America, it does seem like we are also a culture of second chances. You know, because there's plenty of people out there that have messed up and we will give them the benefit of the doubt. So
I don't think that always happens, though.
Okay.
Yeah. I think a population that faces a lot of stigma and maybe doesn't get second chances, I'm talking about like the broader society, doesn't get that like broader society second chance. For example, pregnant women who misuse substances.
Okay.
I think they are probably among one of the most vilified, maybe, of people.
Pregnant women that are taking substances.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right.
So, you know, you're trying to say that there's not any resources of getting them to talk about how they maybe got into that situation to begin with, to make them understand so that they can begin some sort of process.
There's not a lot of resources to help them. There's not a lot of resources to help them in their recovery process and motherhood at the same time.
Which
like
is
a lot of things that happen, what will usually happen is that if they come in, for example, or let's say during a prenatal checkup or something like that, it is discovered that they've been using substances, usually Child Protective Services will be contacted, and you know, there's this immediate separation.
And how in your experience?
And then this woman will also be, usually, depending, you know, she'll be charged or something, right? So it's like this very criminal aspect to it, and really, you know, understanding that substance use is a disorder, disorder, you know, is
that has
something,
roots of something else,
right? And you know, something that, you know, just creating more trauma by separating the mom from the baby, separating the baby from the mom, you know, creating more trauma
which is something
not
that's going on a lot right now.
Yes. And it's not going to help. It's not going to help the family at the end of the day. It's just going to create more trauma.
Yes. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Completely. So I wanted to do a little switch here and talk about, you live in Kansas City, and you are from, or you went to high school with my wife, who is in South Florida.
Yes.
You know, and Miami, which is a very cultural, very flavorful type of place.
Yeah.
And now you're in Kansas City, which probably has a different flavor.
Yes.
For sure.
I would say so.
Speak about some of the flavor of Kansas City and how some of it may rub you the right or wrong way.
Sure. you know, Kansas City always felt like a big town. Excuse me, big town to me. A lot of people like to describe it that way as well. It does have like this like kind of like big town feel to it, but Kansas City also has a lot of refugee populations.
And refugee from where?
So, good question. So, to my understanding, there's a big Catholic Charities program in Kansas City, and Catholic Charities sponsors a lot of refugees to come to the States. And so, Kansas City is a place where they're at. And so, there are, you know, a lot of people don't realize it, but there are a lot of people from Vietnam. There's a Hmong population in Kansas City, you know, and there's a lot of Mexicans, a lot of Salvadorans and Hondurans, and then, you know, it's nice because you can still find Ethiopian restaurants in Kansas City, which is always great. So yeah, I think it's not a big part of the population there. But it definitely is. So I like to be in those spaces or really whatever. Cool. But Kansas City has, you know, there's some gentrification going on that people are trying to figure out how to build up the city without creating more negative outcomes.
Without excluding.
Right. So without pushing people out who are already on the margins and just like kind of keep pushing them to further margins. You know, how do you do that exactly?
So that is a good question right there.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the heart of what we're trying to get at in these discussions is how do we get the people that are on the lower part of the bell curve and speak to them in a way where we can spark a curiosity for the world that they live in, which can then spark some sort of passion that can get them into those gentrified neighborhoods, because now they have a passion that they can work towards that may be able to give some sort of you know, something good back to the world. But we need to spark something in them first. And it's going to be a complex answer, whatever it is, because it's a complex universe in general.
Absolutely.
So, you know, so that's one of the conversations I'd like to dig in with not only you, but all the guests that come here. How can we help to serve those people that are underserved to get them to the point where they can be sparked and you know, you never know what comes from a spark.
No, absolutely. And it's not just people who are underserved, but also recognizing that people who are not underserved, who might be more served, who may have more resources at their disposal than others, helping them to recognize, you know, how can they share? You know, how can they be able to do so in a way that creates community. But I was telling you earlier that I think a lot of it is just communication and just building relationships with people. I don't know if people know how to communicate. I definitely don't feel like I'm the best communicator,
but there's only one way to get better at it, and that is to practice.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think only by reaching out and meeting new people, you know, going to different places, doing that, you know, being proactive about that, I think helps.
So what do we do when somebody wants to communicate a different message that is completely of the opposite message?
That's okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
you gotta have all types of ideas.
People can communicate. I think as long as it's not communicated in a hostile way, I think as long as they're not communicating it in a way that is aggressive or a way that puts down other people, there's a way to communicate in a respectful manner a difference of opinion.
Yeah. For sure.
And so,
a difference of opinion doesn't make somebody a bad person just because they have a different of opinion. It's just a difference of opinion. Right.
But it's understanding, where does their opinion come from? Is their opinion rooted on some sort of fact? Is it rooted on some sort of research? Is it a personal experience that created this opinion?
Yeah.
Or is it maybe hearsay that has
Yeah.
created this personal opinion? So I think getting to the trying to understand where these opinions come from is
there's
important.
a whole bunch of that. Like me in the health and nutrition world, where you have the people, it's very religious kind of. You know, you have the high fat, low carb people want to throw stuff at the carbs are not the problem
true.
people, and so it's there's always these difference of opinions. And when
I
I
hear
get
that,
into some
yeah.
of these discussions in the Twitterverse, I try to come from a space that knowing that both camps are coming from a place where I think they want to help as many people as possible. And I think if we can learn how to communicate with that as a foundation,
Yeah.
that would help people get further along in the way that they're communicating.
Yeah.
So something else I wanted to ask about Kansas City,
Yeah.
because I know that Kansas City did that whole Republican, 100% Republican project where they
on the
took
Kansas
the taxes
side,
away,
yeah, the
and
state of
they did
Kansas.
everything. They did a Republican's dream.
So yeah, that's
And
when
I find that a lot of people don't know that happened and don't know the results of what happened there.
yeah, it's interesting. I don't know much about it, but so then Governor Brownback did do
The
a lot
Republican's dream.
of right, and you know there were some, I think, repercussions from that. And I don't know all the details.
Since
but
you don't know the details, what would you say was just the emotional feeling about everything that was going on?
Sure, I would say certainly from my friends on the Kansas side of Kansas City, there was definitely a lot of anger. It felt like resources were being taken away from public services,
Yes.
and why was that happening? You know, so why were schools, you know, being threatened and being shut down?
And they
so
actually shut down schools because they ran out of funds.
they ran out of funds.
Because they lowered taxes to the point where no money was coming into the state.
That I don't know, but I do remember that they ran out of funds, and
yes.
even like the university had to close.
That's very interesting, you know, because we also have a very similar, but on the opposite side, you have a similar project that went on like in Detroit and like the Flint, Michigan, and you know that project didn't go so well either. So we have a blue side that had their dream and that kind of didn't work. We had a red side that had their dream and that kind of didn't work. So that means we still need to keep talking and communicating about solutions, because when we go to the edges, it seems like it doesn't really work.
Well, yeah, and I think solutions should be probably started more at a local level,
sure.
like at a smaller community level.
Yes.
I think solutions may have bigger
reverberations through a community
yeah,
if they start
yeah, and I
more
think
grassroots.
it's right, exactly. That's definitely the point. Having people feel invested as if they're part of the solution,
Yes.
As opposed to feeling like they weren't even part of
Yes. That they
solution.
feel like, why am I even going to get involved in this?
Right.
Because
My voice
nobody's
doesn't.
listening to me.
My
and
voice
even
doesn't
if they
count.
do. Yes.
That kind
So
of stuff.
that's something
Yeah,
I've been
no.
talking about lately, and I said it in Twitter yesterday with the whole Kavanaugh
Yeah.
hearings, and then the blue side starts screaming about, well, you guys didn't even give Garland a chance. And I'm like, you know, for those of us that don't want to get into the dirtiness of the politics, it's like, what is our choice? And if this is supposed to be of the people, and 50% of the people in this country aren't even, you know, playing the game. So half of the country that you're trying to hold together doesn't even want to play this game anymore, because they're not even showing up to vote. They're not even
but are they
showing up.
not showing up to vote because they feel like they've been excluded from
Yeah, like they're not being
the
heard.
solution?
Yeah,
Right, the
they're not being
problem-solving
heard.
process, you know, and yeah.
And all they're hearing is, oh, well, this guy did this and that guy did. It's a whole lot of pointing fingers, a whole lot of hypocrisy, but
Absolutely.
nobody saying, well, here's a solution. Here is something we can do to silence both of the edges, because the edges, you know, they're always going to be the loudest.
Yeah, I do think there are people who are working on solutions.
Yes.
I don't think that gets a lot of press, though. And I think it's a matter of maybe finding ways to elevate some
Yes.
of these, groups that are working on
Well,
some
that's why we're
really
sitting here
innovative
right now.
solutions, to things. And they might be smaller scale. It might be
Yeah.
something that works in their community.
Yes.
And you can't take something that works in one community and
And
just
take
automatically plop it into
another
another.
one.
You do have to tweak it, and you have to make it to what works
Here,
in
yeah.
that community.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think it's happening. I don't think we hear about it a lot. But I think once you start tapping into your own personal community, I think you'll find a ripple effect of starting to connect with people who are doing things. And
Yeah. Well, that's where the whole intellectual dark web led me to this idea of sitting down here with you.
Okay.
And with anybody who's willing to speak again about having solutions. But it looks like we're starting to run out of our beautiful light here in
Yeah.
Savannah, Georgia. And I'm sure we can have conversations about this
Yeah,
maybe in
absolutely.
the future again. So for
Yeah.
everybody out there,
Believe women.
yeah, believe believe in people and humans, and that we can overcome, period, all of us together. So until next time, keep having idea sex so you can have super cute idea sex babies. Peace.